Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Astral interview. And here with me, I'm Marie Delanote. Get her to help me out.
Don't worry.
How are you, Marie? It's a great pleasure to meet you.
And you. I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me where you grew up. Tell me.
So I was born in Belgium, in the Flanders.
Okay.
And
Wow.
long story short, so I have three sisters, so a house full of women. I studied music from the age of 14. I went to
wow.
to a specialized music high school.
So what inspired you to study music?
I was really good at it, and I was one of those dreamers, who was more creative, artistic.
Beautiful.
Yeah, otherwise studying in school wasn't really my thing, so and seeing that I was good at it, I did the entrance. So I was born in Belgium, in the Flanders.
Okay.
And
Wow.
long story short, so I have three sisters, so a house full of women. I studied music from the age of 14. I went to
wow.
to a specialized music high school.
So what inspired you to study music?
I was really good at it, and I was one of those dreamers, who was more creative, artistic.
Beautiful.
Yeah, otherwise studying in school wasn't really my thing, so and seeing that I was good at it, I did the entrance exam and I passed it, and
Wow.
that's how it went. But to be honest, it's when I entered that school at the age of 14 that I really felt at home with those artistic people. Before that, school was the first 2 years of high school were very hard. I hadn't found my way.
You haven't quite landed.
Yeah. So the creative people, being surrounded by other musicians and actors, people wanted to study acting, and
Right.
doing theater was exactly where I needed to be. So that was fun years. Yeah.
So acting and theater.
Yeah, I was in the music department, but we were all mixed. It was a high school for future musicians and future actors and people who want to go in theater and film. Yeah.
Fun.
So very creative.
Fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
So what did you take up then in the realm of music yourself?
Yeah, I started with the piano from very young, from the age of 7. I started music.
Wow.
And I always continued drama, so acting myself the whole way through, but that was just on the side. And then I picked up double bass on the way in high school as well as a second instrument, which eventually took over. And I continued that in my higher studies after high school. But then once I met my now husband, and we started having children, and then kind of that took over. So I stopped music. So I did play at the Royal Opera House in Belgium, the double bass.
Wow.
Fantastic. That's really like the orchestra underneath the stage whilst they're doing opera, singing upstairs, on stage. Was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the
really
acoustics would have been amazing.
Yeah. That was a really great experience. Really happy I went that far and I did that. And then it completely stopped. Yeah, I just stopped and I focused on the children. Which, to be honest, I found the hardest time in life when the children are really small. I find that an incredibly tough job. Yeah, because it's not just about what you want to do. You have these little beings,
Right, of course. How many little beings?
4. So we ended up with 4. So it's busy.
Yeah. And how many boys and how many girls?
2 boys, 2 girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell us about your special story now.
Well, my offer, you know what, Shahiras, I think I have a few special stories that have come onto my path, which have really shaped me. And I think we all do, in life. When we really look back at what we've been through so far, whatever age, things happen which really shape you.
And when you look back, it's always like you see the paths too, like why this happened to make this happen to make this happen.
Yeah, totally. And when you're in it, it can be so overwhelming, and you think, is this ever going to stop, or how is this going to, you know, end up? But at the end of the day, it
Right.
always ends up okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had a few. I kind of, you know what? I think I have several paths which that have been crossing. I have my creative path and I have my spiritual path. But to be honest,
So
now at this age, it kind of started intertwining. To be honest, yeah.
yeah, they usually do, right? Your spiritual path and your, well, is music still part of your life?
No, no, not
No,
well.
not at all.
Not. I will say not. I'm not playing anymore, even though now that we've moved and I know a beautiful spot in the house where I could put a
Right.
piano, and I've told my husband this is where the piano will come.
Right.
I'd love to pick the piano up again. But it's it will definitely continue to play a big part in now. That's a whole other story in the filmmaking that I'm now doing, because I think music is such an incredible
Integral.
part, yes,
Yeah.
of filmmaking. And then I'm lucky that I will be working with some amazing musicians who I personally know really well, who I know that they will know exactly what I want. So again, thanks to having done that in the past, that will now come into my massive benefit in the filmmaking path I've now created. Um, but spiritually, I think, you know what, there's been so many moments, but the biggest, I think, where do I start?
Well, let me help you. So
Yes.
we were talking about music, and at some point your life changed and you shifted from your career in music to your life, your life at home and with your family. So
Yeah.
at some point spirituality came into your life. So when was that?
Yeah.
Tell me
I
that.
I think it's always been there. I've always had
Of course.
an enormous intrigue on, you know, past lives, and especially oracle cards. I remember as a teenager, you know, go to these ladies who put all the cards and trying to understand it, trying to
Right.
understand how can they know your future. But now now I know that what is in those cards is the path my energy is currently focused on. So if I don't like
Right.
what's in those cards, I can change that. So they're a
That's right.
guidance. But that age, I didn't know that. So it's always been there. It's always trying to find out more, trying. I've never felt like I fitted in when I was younger. I always felt like the weird one. Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
fitted in well with the creative people in high school, you know, a
Right.
bit different. Um, and I think I met this lady. She actually came into my life around the age of 18, and she was so highly, she just clairvoyant as can be, and she's been my spiritual mother, really. She has
Wow.
taught me enormously a lot. Forever grateful that she was there at that moment, because I really needed her at that moment in time. And she taught me Reiki with classes, and it was all very much trying to understand.
How did you meet? Did you seek her out or?
Well, it was I must have been around 17, 18, and I was out with some friends, and one of them said, and she was a friend of a friend, I didn't know her, and she said, "Oh, we have exams coming, but there is this lady, and she sees everything, and she does all sorts." And then I felt really calm, and I was like, "Ooh, someone who can see," you know. So I was so
Yeah.
intrigued by it. So I just rang her up for a just to see who she was, and
Right.
it went from there, and we got on really well, and she kind of just guided me. And there was a certain point after several years, and I said to her, "Look, can I learn what you do?" And she said, "Well, anyone can do it, but you have
Right.
to be ready for it." and
Right.
and you were ready. And I was like, "Oh
Oh.
yes," you know, so excited, really like a small child. That's
Right.
always how I have felt about it. I find it so exciting, that world, the world we don't see with these eyes, but that we see with that this eye,
Absolutely.
in our minds, and
In
and
our
at,
hearts.
and in our hearts, exactly, yeah. And I think the first time, so I went for the first lesson, let's say it like that, and I had no idea what to expect. But I remember before I walked in, I said to my angels, to my guidance, I said, "Right, show me something," because there's always been that, still that doubt. Is this real? Am I
Right.
making this up? What is all
Right.
this about? I said, show me. I need to know what this is, that this is real. And I sat down in front of her. Her name's Anne, and she just, of course, said to me, "All right, what do you see?" I was like, "Oh, you know." So anyway, it goes from there. You then learn to tune
Right.
in, and I had this incredible vision above her head, this spiritual being.
Okay.
It was the most peaceful light that we can't, as humans, we can't feel it with our human feelings, but there's this out of this world feeling I got from this being.
So that's
um
interesting that you make a distinction between our human feeling and our spiritual feeling.
yeah, I think it's very different.
Okay.
We cannot, um it is on such a high level. I think we're on different planes, aren't we? And
Right.
those spirits are that world where we come from, which we're a part of, vibrates on such a different level. I get goosebumps talking about it, that we can't feel it with our human feelings.
Right.
um
Right.
but it is absolute total stillness and peace and beauty. So and at that moment I knew, okay, this is absolutely amazing, and this is part of us, and this is real. um uh,
Wow.
of course, what I then learned from her, learning to read, to feel, to understand the messages that come through,
Right.
it took a long
Took
time.
you, took you, yeah,
It
absolutely.
Yeah, and
And you
loads of
probably went
practice.
from and you probably went from one teaching to another teaching, and
Yeah,
one thing led you to another, that
yeah,
led you to another, that opened up a new door for you.
yeah, exactly. It is not. You think at the beginning, you think, right, now I'll know what to do, but that is not how it works at all. Because then you have moments of doubt. It's literally the onion, isn't it? The onion that peels, and you keep
That's
peeling,
right.
and then
Right.
next layer comes off. And then there was other things that came on my path, and then it was like, whoa, when you start combining everything, and that makes you just stronger and more sure about what we're doing here and who we really are.
Mhm.
And it gives more peace and more understanding and higher consciousness, and it makes life a lot more peaceful and interesting. uh
Absolutely.
yeah, so bit by bit, and that's how it goes. But that was really the
The
beginning. And then,
opening.
yeah, yeah, it was. And I think I had, then a few years later, because like every few years, like something popped up to,
So you mentioned tarot cards and your fascination with tarot cards.
yeah.
So did you basically pick up a deck and just start intuiting and practicing, or did this lady then guide you?
She never helped with the tarot cards, and I have to say, I used to have enormous self-doubts. Who am I that I can do this? Who am I
Right.
to understand this? Enormous
Right.
self-doubts. My grandfather, and I love that story because it really connects me with who I am. He's passed away now, but he was a doctor, so real everything needed scientific evidence.
Right.
And more in the day of today, people start explaining it scientifically. It is
Hmm.
science, really.
It is
But
absolutely.
in his life, it was hoo-ha. And so he was very intelligent, all about science. But he did palmistry, and he read the future in normal playing cards, because his
Wow.
mother used, and apparently I look just like her, and character and physically as well, but I've never met her, of course. And apparently she used to take him to ladies reading cards, and that's
Oh
how he
wow.
learned.
Right.
I'll never forget, because I loved it. I had a special bond, I thought, with him. And I said, please, please read my hands, Granddad. I was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
And he took my hand, and he looked at it, and he closed it, and he said, you make your own future. So so at that
Yeah.
moment, of course, I was like, come on, you know.
Yeah. You
But
gotta
I
do
knew,
better than that.
yes, come on. But he had quite some stories where I knew, where he was absolutely amazed as well, that what he saw was real. He also, when he passed away, because he believed in parallel universes, and more I'm really trying to, get to know more about it. I don't know much about it. I'm intrigued. And when he passed away, we me with 3 friends, we went to see a medium, and I heard about her. She had no idea who was coming because it was just a friend who had bought tickets for all other people, me
Tickets for
included.
everybody, yeah.
So yeah, and without putting names on it. And I said to Granddad, okay, well, if parallel universes are real, just come through in the reading, because he's not that kind of person to come through in mediumship readings like
Right.
that in a room in a pub.
Right.
He was the first one who came through with messages that only I knew. I knew it was for me. So
Oh my
it's
God.
a fascinating one. So I haven't
So
got
it
more
is
answers.
fascinating because it kind of takes that that dual play, you know, where the individual who's coming through also has someone anticipating them coming through in the audience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
It
Well,
takes that dual connection. It's not single. It's, you know, when a medium's up there and they're calling on people to come in, there's somebody in the audience already wanting them
yeah,
to come in, and
yeah.
that's what creates that connection.
hmm I think that's something over the last 15 years I have really learned is it's up here. What we send out with our minds, that doesn't mean we can't have bad days where we feel really like just leave me alone and let me be sad or let me be dark thinking. That's not going to affect it straight away. We're humans, we all have days
Right.
like that. But in
Right.
general, it's with our mind that we send out the signals, that we create everything that we have in our lives. Yeah,
Absolutely.
totally.
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
so your dad comes through in the
granddad.
experience you had, and that's how did you feel your dad came through?
It was my granddad.
Your granddad.
Yeah, I was. It was really nice. It was a bit weird because even though I wanted to, I didn't expect it to happen. I was like, well, let's
Right.
play a game here,
Yes,
and
yes,
I felt a
yes.
bit cheeky. I felt a bit like, oh, can I do this? you know, but and it was quite cool. That is a subject that I know not much about, but has really intrigued me because he
Yeah.
believed in the parallel universes. So I'll have to maybe over the next 10 years, 20
Yeah.
years, find out more
So you've
about that
never
stuff.
switched the table then? You've never been in the position of the medium then? Yes.
I have done mediumship. Yeah,
Have you?
yeah,
Tell me
I have
about it.
done. Well, it's another thing where when you doubt yourself, it's at the beginning, it's really like, am I making this up? Am I seeing this? But
Yeah.
you have to let it go. You just
Mhm.
have to open up, and whatever comes in, you have to trust and go with it. Because to be honest, even though I've used the mediumship to in the first cases actually, and it must have been spirit helping me as well, it was people coming to me for me to do readings and energy healing, what I had learned when I was younger from Anne, who had taught me that. And there
Right.
was cases then suddenly I could see with my mind's eye, um a man or a woman, and so I started giving information. So it's without knowing I was doing mediumship, I was doing
Right.
mediumship. So
Right.
it just happened. um and it's actually a lot easier that way than when you're kind of sitting there and someone wants a message from
That's right. Because
it's a lot.
then you have all these fears and doubts coming
Yeah,
in that are right.
yeah, and suddenly you
Yeah.
have a pressure. You feel the pressure, and I think that's where I through the years really a lot had to remind myself, you're only human,
Mhm.
Marie, it's fine. Just
Mhm.
let it all go and trust, because at the end of the day, you not they are giving you the messages. You don't have to
That's
do
right.
anything. You just let it go. And the more I started doing that, actually the stronger the messages became. But I have to say, messages for myself is the hardest yet. I do not like doing it. It's funny, isn't it? You help so many other people, and it
Yeah.
comes in, you can see it, and you understand it. And then for yourself, you're like, oh, come on. You know why? But I think all people working with energy,
Right.
get that.
So anyone on the path of psychic development and mediumship often also enter the path of healing and physical healing. Did you do that as well?
Yeah, that's something that I won't say forced because they don't force, which was just dropped upon me when our fourth child was born at 24 weeks pregnancy.
Right.
The amazing thing was I had a friend. This is another incredible. See, the more I think about it, I've had such incredible stories already. When you look back, if I can
Yeah.
whiz back a tiny bit, because
Go ahead,
this is
please.
quite a cool story as well. And
Please.
she one day she just came. We had moved to England from Belgium because we lived in Belgium first, and we moved to England. And my father came to see us, and he had brought a friend with him. He was with his partner, and their friends came. And I remember seeing her walk towards me on the parking, and I thought,
Right.
this is odd. She's here for a reason. And she thought exactly the same. You know, we'd never
Wow.
met each other before. It was really, really weird. And then she said to me, suddenly we sat down, and I could see her, I could sense it. And she said, that was before the other story of my baby. And she said, Marie, this building we're in, you need to clean this up. And
Oh,
we lived in an old psychiatric institution, which was
oh,
made into,
wow.
yeah, it was made into apartments, luxury apartments. It was beautiful. And
Wow.
there we go. So
So
I was like,
how old was the building?
the building dated from 1870, 1850. So it had been a psychiatric institution that was in Worley in Essex. And when we moved to England, we had to rent first. And I didn't like any of the houses. And eventually my husband came up, even though we had 3 children. It was like, this apartment. I was like, yes, it's beautiful, it's clean. So I was clearly, universe pushes us in certain directions. Sometimes we don't
Yes,
even know what's
absolutely.
happening. We
Yeah.
don't, you just go
Yeah.
with it. And so my friend had said, there's all, and the funny thing is, I had felt things, but I had ignored it. I've been ignoring it.
Right.
And so as she said it, a lot started making sense. And she said, you have to protect yourself, um, because many of the spirits stuck here don't even realize they're dead yet.
Right.
It scared the living
Well,
daylights out of me.
it's a psychic institute, so there's got to be lots of psychic activity there, right?
It was, I get goosebumps again. You know what? It frightened me. It really
I can
did.
imagine. Yeah, I can
And
imagine.
I think that's partly why I had to do it as well, because it has taught me and it showed me this whole other world again.
Right.
So one day I just kind of like, okay, let's go and walk around here. So I started wandering around, and I was like, okay, there's no one there, I'm still human. That's the message to anyone
Right.
doing this work. We're human,
Right.
if you have
Right.
doubts, you're scared, it's fine. It's normal.
Yeah.
But don't let it stop you in doing the work. And
Right.
just relax and trust, because you guided into it for a reason. I put big light around me. I always do that because I knew with that work. And
So
and I
that was part of the teaching that your teacher that you met when you were 17, 18 showed you?
no, you know what, that was something completely different, because that was when I was working doing the healing, which I was taught by Anne when I was 18. She always said we connect with the infinity sign through your from heart to heart, or from solar plexus to solar plexus. It
Okay.
connects. And when you're done, you cut it through again. So each person is back in their own energy. Very
Okay.
important. That was especially at the beginning, I used it. The more I then done the work, the easier it was, and I didn't need to do that anymore. So that was like it's a very nice beginning trick when you do healing work. You connect with the infinity sign from heart
Right.
to heart, or from solar plexus to solar plexus. But don't forget to very kind, just in your mind's eye, cut it through when you're done. You have your positive energy, I have my positive energy, and you cut. So we,
Wow.
so we're not
So
sucking each other's energy.
it's really quite a symbolic thing and an intent related
Yeah,
thing. And possibly the symbol you use doesn't necessarily even have to be the infinity sign,
that's what
as
that's
long
what
as it's
we
something that you're using
yeah.
that, right?
Yeah, I think the infinity sign is a beautiful one, because we are infinite and we're
Absolutely.
connected. We connected into,
Absolutely.
you know, every all information is there. Everything you are,
Absolutely.
I am you, you
Yeah.
are me. It's all there.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes the work, healers and people who look past the veil, it's seen
Yeah.
as it's not possible, or but you know it's just we are one. It's we all we do is we trust and we open up to it, but we can all do
Right.
it. But the
Right.
biggest thing I've learned through this whole process, and I'll bet I'll have loads more to learn, but what I've learned so far is to trust. Just
Absolutely.
trust in the
It's
process.
actually, I believe, the number one thing, because unless you're willing to do that or able to do that, then everything falls apart. If
Yeah,
you right,
yeah,
because and it's backwards to what you've been brought up to know and feel. Right, it's so
yeah,
totally backwards. So
yeah,
this trust thing, and every time you have to almost actively and and consciously choose it,
yeah.
or else it goes backwards.
Totally. Yeah. It's that was one of the hardest, that's one of my biggest life lessons, is to trust, because the more you trust and the more you let go, the easier things become. And even though I
Yeah.
still often revert, like, oh, listen, it's like, let
Yeah.
go. You
Let
know
go.
where you know where you're going, you know what you want, whether it's for whatever it is in your life, but definitely if you do healing sessions and the connection with
Yeah.
people, let go. Because at the end of the day, it's spirit showing you. You don't have to do
Right.
anything. You just need to be
Right.
open and use your mind's eye. Use, some people see it, some I with me it's always in my mind's eye, some and my knowing. I just know or I see. Other people
Right.
hear, I find that scary. I don't want to hear, so I don't hear
Yeah.
because I've blocked it off.
Right.
But I see and I know, and I feel.
And you
uh,
feel.
yeah,
So when
you know
you mentioned the heart and the solar plexus, so it could be either or
I just naturally feel, and often
yeah.
that already gives me information about the person I'm going to work
Right.
on as well.
Right.
It's So yeah, but then that depends. I can't say a specific thing because then things already pop up. Normally, the solar plexus is people who are already struggling with being who they are,
Right.
and the right to act. And when it's the heart, it's people who are struggling with love and
Yeah.
emotions,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. But we are who we are, an
Yeah.
accumulation of everything we've been through since the birth of our soul. So many things we don't even know why, and it's all energy. It's in there, and I will then. But now we're on to another topic, which started with
No.
my baby born when she was born prematurely, is then I use my mind to unravel that energy and to
Right.
change the state of the energy. And then, because when you change the state of the energy, everything around it changes, how people
So let's
feel.
go back. Let's go back to you were talking about walking around that building, and you were
Yeah,
going to, let's go back there
yeah. So
for a second.
I
We can always talk.
yeah, well, I had no idea what to expect. So she's still a dear friend of mine now, Karine. She's in Belgium,
Yeah.
and she just said, make sure you protect yourself because some of them don't know they're dead. So okay, so there was no one there, and I just stopped, and I put a big bright light around me because if I feel a bit insecure, that's what I do, you know.
Right.
And I opened the heavens, so all in my mind's eye. I opened the heavens and I asked protection, and I said, please help me to bring these souls. So I put my intention out there. So what I always do with healing work, what's your intention? What is it you set out to
Yeah.
do?
Right.
So to bring these souls that are stuck to the light. Within seconds, honestly, I have never experienced this, but thank God that Karine had warned me, so I knew this could happen. I had this, it's like, and this happens in split seconds. It's not time is gone at that moment.
Yeah.
A really odd
Yeah.
experience. This energy placement, I could feel it from the other side of that room, that hallway I was standing in, whooshing right in front of me, and I was right here. I could see a face, a real human face, but threatening towards me. And
Oh
at the
my.
other, so it was really scary. I've never had that before. I don't like that
Right.
kind of stuff. But I
No.
kept saying, "You're dead. Go to the light. You're dead. Go to the light." Until the energy softened. I could see it softening, and it went up. my heart was going,
Yeah, of course.
it was, but it taught me a lot, because I also then, as I continued, there was loads of groups, and that was really sad.
Right.
Women huddled together. So these were souls, which I learned they were there just like me and you. The only difference was they weren't in their bodies anymore. And because they had suffered so greatly, whether it was really mentally or because things had happened in that institution which wasn't good care, and that
Right.
was especially a longer in the 19th century, not always, but um, that they couldn't let go of the place where they passed away. It cleared up beautifully, and then I learned also to put what really helps, and I advise that to anyone doing healing work, because it helps the world. Like if I go to a hospital or I see buildings where I naturally feel, oh, that doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
I put on the corners of the buildings into the ground like 4 extractor fans, pipes, and I imagine a tornado in it, whooshing all the negative energy into Mother
And
Earth.
it,
Yeah.
wow.
And
Yeah,
I
that's
asked
a
Mother
beautiful,
Earth, yeah, thank you to heal this for us.
right.
Um, and also because then the building, that was, I found that quite emotional as a woman. Then I walked around, and it was as I started that work, because it was a process, I started having single souls finding me, because they started knowing this is happening. We can be free.
Right.
Even this sounds scary, but you get used to it, and it's not scary and it's not bad.
Yeah, yeah.
I was in the shower and I would see it.
I
I was
had
like, okay, yeah,
right. Yeah, I've interviewed quite a few people and they share a similar story that once they had one experience where they were able to help somebody, many, many people showed up. I mean,
yeah,
I had a situation once where I had people, I didn't really do anything, but it was just somebody did a clearing for me and they cleared my home. And when they cleared my home, um, I'm like, whoever's here, whatever's here, I wish you love and light. And I absolutely wish you um, you know, freedom and an easy path to the light. And that's all I really said
yeah,
in whatever words I knew how to say. And that night I have a dream where all these people are coming to me. They're coming down this ladder,
yeah,
um, staircase, and they're coming and saying thank you to me, and they're moving on. They're moving on. There
yeah,
was like hundreds,
yeah.
and it made me
That's
and it made me wonder, like, that every one of these houses probably has that many people who need releasing, right? And
yeah,
somebody needs to do that work.
yeah, yeah. I think it's whether you consciously can see it, feel it, know it or not, you can do it, because it's all in
Yeah,
our intention. And of course, the
right,
more you do it then, and the more you train on seeing
right.
and feeling, the more you will actually experience it as well. Because as I wandered down those um, buildings, it was a very, very big building, and parts of it hadn't been renovated yet. And I was walking, and suddenly I saw this little building, and I knew I had to put the light above it. So I did that, and it was hundreds of babies that had been aborted. So it
Oh
must have
my
been,
God.
it was
Oh my God.
it was really, that was really emotional. And it must have been girls that came in the psych ward because they were pregnant in the 1900s, and then they aborted the babies, and whatever, that's what came up into my mind what happened. Or they got pregnant whilst they were there, the women, because it wasn't always.
Right.
And so that was an enormous release of all those babies that had been aborted. And the funny thing was, Corrine had said to me, as soon as you've done this work, you'll move. And I was like, what? We've only been here 4 months, Oh,
Right.
and a month later, we moved, because
Moved.
then I was pregnant with our 4th baby, and my husband panicked. Was like, we can't live in an apartment with 4 children. so, so we moved on. So I was clearly guided there to have
Yeah.
this, to do this work, and
Right.
it's an experience I'll never forget. It taught me a lot about who we are
Wow.
as,
Yeah.
souls,
Yeah,
as being
absolutely.
humans.
And it's almost like because um I guess humanity as a whole isn't ready. Individuals are being guided and taken down paths to heal different aspects of humanity that need to be healed. And I
I think
wonder,
you're right.
and I often wonder about this whole idea of light, and it's like this common thing where you send the energy to the light, right? And I mean, of course, we all know the experience of light and the concept of light in a spiritual nature. But I often wonder, like, these beings that went through their lives, why are they so not willing to go to the light? You know what I mean? Because they're in this area already, and they know that, it's a dead end in a sense, right? So why do they resist going to the light at this point now?
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what I've been wondering myself. I've been I so far I haven't found that answer yet. I've been trying to find out for myself, but why do they stay stuck here? Because it's done, it's finished. They no longer are in that body. They
right,
can go.
right. And
Can't I
they're
think
no longer around their loved ones either, because they're long gone too, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
I
they're
think
so
they're so stuck in that grief, in that lower vibration, which fits more onto earth than it does where we
right.
really come from. Yeah, but I do believe that there's going to be less and less because there's more and more people who
Yes.
are doing this work, and
Yes, I agree.
vibrations are lifting, and Mother
Yes.
Earth is healing as well. She's saying,
Yes.
oh, she's also saying, hang on, something needs to change here, as we know. But that's why when I
Right.
do
Right.
healing, I always heal on the planet as well. So I heal the connection between what happens on Mother Earth,
Right.
so she can release what has happened.
That's so important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've started doing that later on. That's something, as you said, you indeed your work evolves, and
Yeah.
you learn things and you move on, and then so that's and that's something I now always do. I heal the connection between what has happened for that person and earth, because that way you heal in all directions of time, everyone involved, and then
Absolutely.
can release as well, so her energy will change and her
Right.
vibration will change because she has no longer got these lower vibrations from what
Yeah.
happened because of humans, because she can release it, so it
Have
should
you
be
ever had have you ever had an experience where after you've released somebody, they've come back to you um and
what the
communicated with you? The energies that you released, has anybody come back and communicated with you after the fact?
the people for whom I've done it.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
no. Like, for example, in this house where you cleared these people and they
no.
went to the light, has anyone come back and communicated with you again, or
No, no, not in
hmm,
once it was released, it was released. I
it
haven't
was released?
experienced that. Yes.
Wow.
I did have
Wow.
once, and that was quite weird because same time when then there was souls just coming because they knew the work I was doing, and I can still see it. I was sitting in my car, and it was like someone was knocking on my window. There was no one there. It was a soul, and it
Hmm.
was a young man in his 20s who passed in a car accident. Well, that's what I got, what came through, and his family was grieving so hard, which is normal, and you have to have the grieving process. I'm no expert in
Hmm.
all that, but that's what he was telling me. But there was no letting go, and
Right.
he couldn't go. And then I helped him a little bit, so I cut cords, put healing onto the family so they could deal with their grieving process, so he could be released and go to the light, and it helped them to deal with everything that had
Right.
happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I watched a remote viewing video where they remote viewed this idea of moksha. Do you know when I say moksha, what I'm referring to?
No.
Moksha, it's basically salvation. It's a Sanskrit word, and they were so you know what a remote viewer is?
No, it's new.
Okay, so a remote viewer is somebody who can basically view a certain time and place or a certain idea or a certain reality based on intent, but there's a process to it. And anyways, it was something that took place in the CIA years ago, where they were using this technique of
Yeah.
psychic development and psychic viewing, and it was called remote viewing. Anyways, I've interviewed a few remote viewers now, but this story I was watching was a remote viewer that remote viewed this idea of what happens when somebody dies, or
Okay. Yeah.
reincarnation, or where does the energy go.
Yeah.
And it was very fascinating because it does go to the light, it naturally goes to the light.
Yeah.
And so it's just how everything comes together, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, how knowledge comes to you,
Yeah.
and how different pieces of the puzzle get solved as
Mm.
these different pieces come to you.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very fascinating, the whole idea of spiritual communication, let's call it.
Yeah. Well, I'd never heard of, I understand now what you're saying. I'd never heard the term remote view.
R-
I'd never heard the term
right.
before. But it's basically what I then do is that, but I never
Right. Yeah.
intently, I just
Yeah.
let it happen. I'm literally
uh,
like, okay, what
right.
is it I need to know right
Right.
now for this person? What do I need to see right now for this person so it can be
Right.
healed, depending on the process of consciousness, of awareness growth,
Right.
whatever it is that they're in. And then that is shown to me, and that's what I work with. But I've
Right.
never intently gone, you know, I suppose you can, it's a bit like when you set your intention for the life that you want, you will
Right.
go and see in your mind's eye, this is what I'm doing, this is who I am, and then you grow towards it. But
Absolutely.
fast to see what has happened. But I
So
suppose I'm kind of thinking out loud now on what you were saying. I suppose when things come up whilst I'm working on someone, I do then ask, okay, what does it mean? Why do I see this, and what has happened? So you could call it
right.
remote viewing. Yeah,
Yeah. And you're actually connecting directly and asking, like, what do I do in this situation, every
yeah,
instance, which is
yeah,
which is which is very what's the word, responsible. I think that's a good
yeah.
word.
Always, yeah,
Yeah.
always. And because I strongly believe, and I always say that sometimes people come to me and for a specific reason, and then there's completely other stuff that comes up. But I always
Right.
tell them, because whatever comes up in your session is what is of importance right now,
Right
because
at
maybe
this moment.
because that needs to be dealt with first before we can deal with something else. It doesn't always
Right.
happen that way. Sometimes
Right.
it is what they come to me with that comes up, but I always trust and say, okay, what do I need to know right now to help this person forwards?
Right.
um,
And it's interesting, like, just thinking back in my own life, that's how it came to me to do it. When I was asked by somebody to help someone else, I'm like, okay, God, what do I do? Right?
yeah.
Well, how do I help this person? How can I ever help this person?
Hmm.
And so help me. And that's how it began for me as well, is that, pulling on that guidance, that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just letting go to it. Okay, so let's go back. You all moved from that place now.
Yes. Yes. I think and that's when that was 2012, near 2000. I was already pregnant then, so I got pregnant
Right.
whilst living in the psych ward. And I knew, so it was 2011, 2012, and I knew there was this big energetic gateway opening around it. It was quite a very special time, 2012, energetically, for humanity, collective consciousness, for everything. So we moved, and I wasn't feeling good in myself at all. I'd learned a lot, but I often went back in the ditch and trying to climb out. It
Right.
was really, really like, come on, when am I finally going to understand this and know what to do? And and that's when my fourth child came onto the scene. So she was born at 24 weeks on the dot. pregnancy.
Wow.
So I had felt it. I knew the second I was pregnant, because normally um, I would always very much off straight away tell everyone, because I've had the luck every time I was pregnant, I've had the baby. I've, really
Yeah.
easy pregnancies and getting pregnant. And but I knew something wasn't right. So my gut feel right from the beginning knew, and I tried to get it out of my head. I tried to push it away,
Right.
because it's not a nice feeling, because it's your baby,
No. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I knew before I knew that it was a girl, because I had a visitation from a little boy. So there was a
Aw.
girl and a boy still. And one morning I was in the kitchen. I could still see it, and I turned around and there was a little boy standing there. And I knew, and he stood in the door opening and he looked at me, and he turned around. There was another door opening. He looked at my husband, and then he was gone. So I knew, oh, he's saying goodbye. The one I'm pregnant with is a girl, and it is a girl. And so when she was born, because I was really ill a few weeks before, and that's where I learned a lot. Then let's start from the start, otherwise we'll get all muddled up.
It's
And
okay.
I knew something was wrong. I had the most horrendous pain in my throat I'd ever had, and I knew this is not normal. So throat's communication,
Right.
really pain. I was really struggling. We were in this new country, England. I was really struggling. Driving on the other side of the road, everything was different. I had 3 small
Right.
children.
Of
My husband
course.
was
Yeah.
always out working. I really struggled, and I felt like I couldn't tell him, because he had to work, and it was very difficult. And
And it was seamless for him.
yeah, because he had to go to work, so
Right.
it was difficult time. And so no surprise, I had this throat infection because I couldn't
Hmm.
communicate it. I was angry, and I was in pain.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor and I said, look, can you please take a blood test, because this is not normal. And he sent me home with just, painkiller. Said, oh,
Aspirin.
you're just an over worried mum. And 2 weeks later, my waters broke. I was 23 weeks pregnant, and I knew, this is bad. And so, and it was Streptococcus A, which is a serious infection. So you get infections when after when you really struggle with emotions. And I had continuously really struggled with my emotions. So accidents and infections are a physical result of really severely troubled emotions
Motions.
that you haven't dealt with. Long story short, when I then look back at my past, growing up, I had an evil stepmother. She was absolutely horrendous since I was 5 years old. Um, an awful woman, that clearly had an enormous effect on me. It was many times when I say things to my husband, and he was like, "Well, Marie, that's not normal," So you think
Right.
as a child, you're growing up, it's normal. It wasn't normal.
Right.
My mother was lovely, but this stepmother was awful.
Yeah.
And lots of things affected me. And then looking back at family lines, where even though my grandfather and my great grandmother are two fascinating, even though they're two really fascinating people, they had there was a love-hate relationship. It was not easy. So these are family circles. Without blaming anyone, it's
Right.
life, it's what it is. You continue those energies. Every new person born
It's a
in that
path.
family, it's a pattern of energy which continues until one person
Right.
says, I recognize this. This is not how I want to continue. You heal it, and then you heal it for the coming
And
people
then
in your line. So I was carrying a lot of heavy emotional, I had a lot of PMS issues, up and down and roller coaster, and that's all a sign of it's in your belly, your emotions. So the
right.
Streptococcus A had hit my womb, throat and then womb. But I was pregnant, my baby was in there, so that was really serious.
Right.
So she came out naturally. She's an absolute, oh,
And 23, 24 weeks is like 6 months, right?
is that 5.5 months?
Five
Yeah,
and a half, 6 months. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just on the cusp of, if she was born a day earlier, they might not have helped her, because there's a cutoff date. So thank God I woke
Right.
up. I was exactly 24 weeks pregnant. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I went to the toilet and out she came. So I caught her. I had her little head in my hand, and then, pulled the emergency cords. The midwives helped me of standing up. She was born. Of course, she was eyes were fused shut. Her brain wasn't
Wow.
unfolded yet. Her skin, a
Right.
baby born that early, it's not formed. It's sticky and it's red.
That's why it's really tiny, right?
She was as big as my hand. She weighed 1
Yeah.
pound, 500 grams, so half a pack of sugar. She wasn't breathing, of course, so because the lungs weren't developed properly. So she. But thank God, she came out and she was directly put into that incubator and got all the support that she needed. I strongly believe that, because at that moment, and I've said it many times and I'll keep saying it because there's always someone new who needs to hear it. But at that moment, it was absolute total surrender. When it's, that baby's born, it's your baby, it's your everything. And it was such total surrender whilst there was enormous chaos around me. As soon as she was wheeled away in the incubator to the NICU, they put me in a bed. And even though it was enormous chaos around me, I suddenly, again, time doesn't exist in that moment. I was in a
Right.
bubble of that same peace that I felt when I met Anne when I was 18. I had that,
Wow.
and I was
Same.
completely surrounded by it. Um, and I knew, and that sounds totally crazy because
No,
scientifically,
I know that feeling. I know that feeling that you're talking about. That knowingness that, whatever's about to happen is really integral at this point in your life. Kind of. I
yeah,
know that feeling. Yes, I
yeah,
understand what you're saying.
yeah, and it was funny because even though I had that feeling of everything's okay,
Yeah.
I was only just starting. The whole
Yeah.
journey had only just started. Um, the journey of
Wow.
healing. And just a few months before that, I had started just online a chakra course and crystal course, and just to find out more because I knew how to do the healing, but I
Right.
wanted to know more. Where does it come from? How does it work? And boom, there she was. And at first
Aw.
you think, just leave me alone, just
Right.
leave me alone. But I had to do it. And I started healing using the natural energy coming through me in her. And that's when I really strongly started working with psychic surgery, which Anne
Right.
had taught me all those years ago, but I never really continued it. So there it was. So I picked it up again.
And
Um,
you had to use it for your own purpose and
yeah,
your own
yeah.
child.
Yeah, yeah. They couldn't have done it better, could they? When your own child, you do it. It was an incredible journey, and that's when I also, and that was quite amazing. There was a young doctor there, and she was energetically enormously strong. She had no idea herself yet.
Right.
I would love to know now where she is, because
Right.
right then she was really in her baby shoes, and there was a lot personally she still had to deal with. I'd love to know where she is now.
I can
But
imagine.
we would because I had my hands on my daughter, and she would ask, "Is that what you're doing?" And then she kind of said a few things, and I looked in the card. She's incredibly powerful. So
So what happened? So what happened? Okay, you have your baby in your hand, you call the doctors, and they take the baby away right away. Is that what happens?
yeah, 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 because she wasn't breathing, so she needed all support. I had her head in my hand first, but then the midwives helped to deliver her body, and then she was off in an incubator. She was intubated, of
Yeah.
course,
Right.
um, and the placenta was completely crumbled. So she did the right thing. She came out. She had to save me and to save her, because a
Right.
few days later, of course, I could only put my hands directly on her because her skin, she still has some
Yeah.
scars because of it. It was really, really fragile. And a few days later, I felt so high fever, and I was like, something's not right. And I went back and I just told the nurse, I could have just gone to bed. Thank God I didn't.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I said, I'm really not feeling well. I'm going to bed. Because just before that, another doctor had come to me and he asked, how are you feeling? Without saying anything else. How are you? I said, I'm fine. I'm fine. Have you
Right.
not got this or that? Or, no, fine. Of course, now afterwards, I knew why he was asking me,
Because
because I was streptococcus A. I was,
he knew.
yeah,
Right.
I was very ill. Thank God I was in hospital. And thank God I told the nurse, I'm really not
Right.
feeling well. And she reacted immediately. And another one, thank God she reacted to it and the alarm bell rang. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been here anymore. I would have been gone. And because I went into a delirious state, I vaguely remember, and they said afterwards, they were really relieved and said, we are so happy to have you back. Apparently I was talking
Oh.
in all kinds of languages to them and in Dutch, and so I can't remember, but yeah, I wasn't in a good state, so
Right.
um and then after that, luckily, I started working on her, and by working on the baby, it was also working on me.
Of
um
course.
and
Of
I got
course.
loads of messages. I would, by example, because her lungs, you have these little lung, or how do you call that in English? It's like little lung bubbles, little, which is in the lungs, and a healthy one has lots of them.
Okay.
If it's, I'm probably explaining it wrong, but I know I know what it is, but I'm probably not
It's
using the
okay.
right terms. But I knew whatever it was had to be there healthy, and hers weren't there because of being born so prematurely.
Right.
So I would just imagine in my mind, I'd say her name, because the whole energy of a person, even if there's 1,000 people with your name, it
Right.
still has a specific energy linked to your name. So
To
you
your
just
name.
have to say the first name, that's it, and then trust, and the energy pops up. And I would imagine seeing her lungs, and then
It's
draw.
because it's also because your intention is connected to that name,
Yes,
right?
yeah, yeah, and to that person. So, and that psychic surgery, where I would imagine in my mind and draw what had to be in her lungs, get it healthy, all those little bubbles, and get the right color, put green color in, and see it radiate health. So my intention was to get these lungs healthy.
Oh my
And
God.
because they call it, they say years, they're always with extreme premature babies, or they have, it also has a name, lung, because they were born so early, lots of
Right.
issues. She never had any more colds than any other
So you
child.
had to, so you probably had to do research though to know what was missing and what was not missing in order to go and apply those things too.
Yeah, that is the best thing you can do. Of course, I was listening to the doctors, and as they explained things to me, I started making visions in
Right.
my mind, so I knew. Then again, it doesn't need to be perfect as long as your intention is there. Then
Right.
it arrives. And it was the same. There was one day, and her sats keep going up and down, and they were like, oh, she probably has an infection or a bacteria or something. They put her straight on antibiotics. So I did my thing, because I strongly believe at the moment, one day we might do purely the spiritual, but at the moment, because of the collective consciousness as well, it's a
Right.
beautiful cooperation between the spiritual healing and the physical, the doctors, what
The
the doctor,
medical healing. Yeah,
medical healing.
absolutely.
Beautiful thing together. Even though,
Symbiosis. Yeah.
yeah, but don't underestimate, if it's you,
The
your own
spirit. Yeah.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And they said, so I went to my room and I just imagined her. I saw her and her blood, and I saw like little creepy crawlies in her blood, which for me in my imagination meant that it was little bacteria, it was impure.
Right.
And I was guided to like suck the blood out, and as we sucked the blood out, I pumped in fresh healthy blood. So it's all up there.
So it's all
Because
visualizing. You were visualizing every little tiny thing.
yes, so the intention was healthy blood, so there's no infections, there's no bacteria, let's get this healthy. And a day later they said, oh, she's breathing fine again. Oh, we haven't, she's fine. And they didn't find anything. So many skeptical, people might say, oh, but it happened so many times.
Right.
There is more, and it's very, very powerful. And then afterwards, I've done it on my children, when they had earaches. I would look at how the ear looks like, and I would go and, as my healing techniques progressed and I started using ethereal crystals, so I would ask for the power of the crystal so I could put that energy directly into organs, into the body. So because they are so powerful and they come directly from this different dimension, their healing purposes
Right.
are enormous, are incredible. So that's how my healing then evolved.
So
Uh,
then your baby, a few days later after this visualization and healing, you performed on the baby, which I guess on some level is a form of Reiki or form of energetic healing as
yeah.
well.
hmm
Um, and how did you know to do that though? Like, how did you know to do that? Like, did you feel guided to do that, or was it just spontaneous, a mother's instinct? What was it that caused you to go in and do that act? Because
Yeah.
without that act, we might not have your little daughter right now.
Yeah. It was partly an enormous guidance, that I just knew, okay, this is how I do it. Don't ask me where it came. Well, I know where it came from. It came from, but don't ask me how else I can explain it. It was enormous guidance.
Right.
Um, yeah, that's what it was. And there was a moment, and that was actually really strong as well. Then we go back to the trust that she was struggling because, of course, she was in hospital
Right.
for 4 months. Even though she was doing really well, she
Hold on.
kept
Right.
and she kept
Four
stop
months.
breathing. Yeah, she kept stop breathing, and you know, and I then know it was Karine, my friend, came back on the scene, and she said, um, it's probably time to step back. She's a very, very powerful little being there, and because I had so committed to this is my baby, emotionally,
Right.
spiritually, mentally, I was so
Right.
engaged and so,
Yeah.
we're gonna do this, that I now had to step back and let her. She was literally saying, "It's too much, mum. Now back off." So that was after several months. That was after 2 months. And I hadn't been at home for ages, and I had other three children at home. But I was so in this bubble. Um, and then I decided, okay, I'm going home now. Um, and I then continued the healing, but it really helped. To sometimes you just need to now you do all your work and then you step back and you let it work. Although, and you have to trust. There it is again.
Right.
Everything
Right.
you've done, trust.
Right.
And after that, I learned to just, I still did the work, and I started doing work on other people in the hospital, which just popped up. So there was clearly certain people there who needed that work whilst
Right.
I was there, and I started doing that work as well. Even though I was first a bit like, oh, come on, I'm here with my baby, and I need to do other work. It's a human thing, isn't it? But I just
Right.
did, and I learned loads from it. I learned loads.
So I wonder, just like, you put those energetic posts in the hospitals and and shoot the negative energy down to the earth, whether you could do that for the whole earth
Yeah, I have
us right
I
now because of what's going on, right?
yeah, yeah. I think we do it, but that's then where we come to collective consciousness, isn't it? Where we're not there yet. We're all
That's
still,
right.
you know. But I think we have to do it because thanks to doing it, we're improving it and we're lifting and we're healing. Because if we would
Right.
say, well,
Right.
let's not do it because it looks like it's not working or whatever, well then it
Whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So
It's not going to work. Yeah.
exactly, people who know how to do it, people who are aware of this, just do it. You know, even if it's just, even if you think, I have no idea how to do this, I can't see, just what you're doing, your intention, your positive intention, to place rose quartz or beautiful crystals into Mother Earth, or whatever you guided, what comes up in your head, it's guidance. Just do it, even if you think it's not going to make a difference. There was there when I just drive, um when I drive and I feel, God, this land needs, this doesn't feel comfortable, I place
Right.
crystals into the earth. So it becomes kind of a second nature. Um,
Right.
or you just place healing in general, or you just generate light from your heart and just shine it out there and imagine in your mind that it just envelops the whole world. And some people might say,
Wow.
oh, it's not going to help. Why? What difference does it make? It does, because if
It does. Yeah.
if more and more people, the more people do it, the stronger that light, and the stronger the positive vibrations, and that's how we can lift each other up. And if it's not, when you do personal healings or on whatever healing, if you think, oh, nothing's changing, something always has an effect on some level somewhere, even if you don't see it or you don't know it.
Right.
Whatever good you send
Absolutely.
out there has effect on some level.
Absolutely. So, so after this experience with daughter and life changing for you and your family as a result of this experience, what happens after this? Like, did you took your healing to another level? You mentioned energetic crystals and things like that. So, how did that come into your reality? This
Yeah.
experience,
That's a next step again, another door they opened, where I was performing healing on a friend. She had lost her husband, and she had so she'd lived in Dubai with her husband, 4 children. They were very young still, and he died. So then she came back
right?
to England with her 4 children, and we became friends. And so that's how I did this. I said, would you like me to do a healing session? So we did this session, and I would work with crystals, just the physical crystals, and I put them in her hands just to hold them so they have positive effect, whilst I do the other energy changing so she feels better. And they told me I had this vision, however you call it, you see it, you know it, to imagine the crystal inside that person, the heart. If it's a liver that needs something, you put it in the liver, or you imagine it.
Right.
So imagine the crystal wherever I knew it had to be. And it was so powerful. And it meant as well that that person
Wow.
would go home still with the crystal doing its work. Because of course
Wow.
they haven't been affected by lower earthly vibrations, because they come directly from a different dimension. And because you ask for a specific personal situation, spirit knows which one, what energy it needs, so it's perfect. So you just imagine them
Right.
inside. So, and it was so powerful, I was so excited. So a week later I rang with Karine again, there she is, and I told her about it. And she said, Marie, you worked with ethereal crystals. I'm like, oh, that's so cool, it
Yeah.
has a name. I'd never heard of it before. So it was really shown to
Right.
me, what,
So
and this is fantastic. So from then
and
on I
so
really
it
started working with it.
and so Corinne had already been working with it and already had the experience, and it just came into your life naturally. So that just goes to show that when we're ready, the download or the information comes to us to
Yeah,
help us go to the next level naturally, organically.
absolutely. Yeah. And that's again a beautiful trust lesson. Whenever you're
Yeah.
happy, whenever you're ready, it comes in, it arrives. It's
Right.
yeah, and that's
And
how
and
it's
I
been
think
going.
said whenever you're happy, I don't think that was an accident, because that does play a part. Your
Yeah.
positive your positive vibe, right?
Yeah, it's, again, we're humans, you take all the emotions have a message, and you take them, you listen to them, and you learn from them, and then using coping mechanisms you can learn to uplift yourself again. When I look back at where I was 10 years ago, my goodness, I'm a different person. I've really learned to embrace all those feelings. I've learned, why am I feeling like this, looking at the family
Right.
line, looking at things that happened. And that's where it starts with ourselves. Look within
Absolutely.
yourself, why am I feeling this, where is it coming from? It's awareness, become aware. I haven't got all the answers at all yet, but I feel so much better within myself now because I'm starting to understand
Yeah,
myself. And because of that, I'm starting to understand life and how it actually works.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, tell us then, just in closing, some of your um, successes in your healing practice. Just, one or two stories that are like those aha moments, or one or two stories that are those those moments that took you to the next level again, and made you realize that this is it, this is what I'm going to be doing, and this is what I love doing, and this is what I know is helping um,
Yeah.
humanity or the individual I'm with.
Mm. Uh, the main ones really are when I met Anne, the ones I've said. There must be more that maybe I'm
Yeah,
just not thinking of now, and maybe later on I'll be like, oh, why did I not say this? That was great. Um,
right.
it
It's
was
really interesting. It's really interesting as you're speaking. I just want to share this observation because your auric field is going green when you're talking about the healing stories.
You know what? I am so happy I am talking to you about this because not everyone is into this, and it's reminds me again of how much I love doing this. But I'm really
Yeah,
incorporating it in. I'm still fully, into the healing every day. It's part of who I am, and I do it when I have healing clients. I do it, and I really enjoy doing it. But even though I'm now focused on a film career and writing, and but what I'm writing and wanting to put on the screen is also because I've written it. It's to bring awareness on certain topics about that we're not just here for nothing, and we're not just, we're so much more than the boundaries of
absolutely.
the physical. I think there was an incredible moment as well. I'll never forget, and it was we were still in Belgium, and that was before my youngest was born, and my brother-in-law Stuart was quite an incredible guy. He helped people in need, youngsters, in Hackney in London, black youngsters who was thrown out the school system, who had troubles everywhere, and he helped them to get back into society. He was absolutely amazing. And Stuart, my husband and I always said, oh, we don't need to get married. We got children, we have that connection. And
Yeah,
suddenly we decided we need to get married. We're like, okay, well, let's get married, you know. And many people prepare months, years for a wedding. We had it organized in 3 months, if it was even that long.
yeah,
And it was the
yeah.
most, people still talk about it. It was such an incredible wedding. The food was amazing. Everything was great. People came over from England. It was really, really amazing. And then we realized that was the last time we saw my husband's brother. Um, and
Oh,
when they left, because otherwise we wouldn't have seen him anymore before he died, and he was only 40 when he died. And I will remember it forever. And he ran to me and he gave me a hug, and he said, "You take care of yourselves. Kids are a credit to you. They're wonderful." And as he went back to the bus that was going to bring them to the airport, I had this vision, and I knew this is it. And I was trying to,
right,
like, what on earth are you thinking? Come on, Marie. And I knew we were
right,
never going to see him again. And it was really that was really one that I didn't want in my mind, and I tried to push it away.
right. Yeah.
And 3 months, less than 3 months later, we had a phone call, and he was in Spain with friends, and he died even before my husband could get to the hospital. And
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so because even before we had the phone call that he died, I was in the car. I can't remember where I was going, and my husband was on his way to the airport, and I was sending him healing. I was sending positive vibes. Come on, Stu, come on. And woof, it all came back. And he said, "Thank you, but no thank you. It's my time to go." So that's where you have the free will of
Yeah.
humans. He knew it
Right.
was time to go. He had decided it's time to go. And
Right.
an hour later, we had the phone call. So even before my
Wow.
husband got there, he'd passed away.
That's
Um,
so fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
I
It's
truly believe too that when we're at death's door, we have the choice. We're given the choice whether we want to go or come back,
yeah.
and we're choosing whether to go or come back. I
Hmm.
don't believe it's as cut and dry as we see it on the physical plane.
No, no. I know I've been here many times before. Um, you know, um, it's I've done past life regressions before, and even though some people say, "Oh, it's just stories," I don't believe it's just stories because it's your energy and it connects you
Yeah,
to who you are now. And maybe certain things that you do that you think that you're afraid of are linked to those past lives. And if you can then
right.
energetically, because there is only now.
Because
So if you,
everything's a story. Because everything's a story, and everyone has a story. And
mm,
like, my cell phone has a story. It has a story, and my
yeah,
computer has a story, and the tree behind you has a story, and
mhm,
everything has a story. So, we call these things stories, but what are stories? They're histories, they're realities.
yeah,
And,
the
where
energy,
did it come from anyways, right? Even
yeah,
if we say it's your imagination, well, where did your imagination come from?
hmm, yeah, yeah, totally. But it's funny because my kids, I love it. And my son, he's a really deep thinker. He reminds me just of my granddad. Very scientific, but then he goes off on these things that I'm like, how do you even think about this? Really fascinating. But that's the next generations for you, isn't it? And
Right.
he thinks, well, imagine if what if we, uh, and we actually just reliving our life. We've actually died, but we're just reliving our life to see how it was. All these
Yeah.
things, how they think. Who knows? I might be
Yeah.
reliving it now. Just
Yeah.
um, everything's energy. It's in the mind.
Absolutely.
It's what you put your mind to. I always say, don't beat yourself up for it if you're struggling. It's human, but then try and become aware and look for help. People who can help you with it, becoming aware, understanding it, and then that's how we can move forwards.
Right. Um, yeah, like, when you talk about the next generation, like little stories that I speak about with my nephew about, like, he had one dream he told me was this green dragon is eating the earth. And when this green dragon eats the earth, everyone's going to be sick, he says to me. And so this is a little kid, and this was like 5 years ago, right? But when all this happened, it made me realize,
Yeah,
right? He was premonitioning
yeah.
something, right?
Yeah, I get goosebumps. It's kids these days, we have to listen to our children. They know
Yeah,
so much. They know so
yeah,
much.
yeah,
It's, whether it's just from kindness or whether it's things like this, that's quite amazing. I have a little dragon at home. My premature baby, she's a little dragon. And
yeah.
she has hardly ever eaten any meat. She always refused it,
Wow,
and now she's
wow, yeah,
I think it was once we came back from school. It was still when we lived in England, and actually the butchers, they were friends of ours. We vegans, and it was
yeah.
they were butchers. They had a butcher, so it's quite funny. Anyway, so and they had the piggies coming, driving past us, and first the kids were like, "Oh, look at the piggies!" And I think it was my son, my 15-year-old, and he said, "Well, where do you think they're going?" Being a teenager,
Oh,
and
right.
she was crying her eyes out, absolutely
Oh,
devastated. It's yeah, the children of the future
yeah, the
generation
next
are
generation,
different.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think actually a lot of them are born vegetarian.
yeah.
I
It's I
do.
find it I find it fascinating, and I have never ever forced her to eat meat. She doesn't. She refuses. And my other daughter as well now. She's like, sometimes she fancies it and then she eats it, but otherwise, well, why would we force them? They
Yeah,
say, we got cows in the fields around us. They look gorgeous. I know
right.
some people don't agree, but they're living beings. I can't.
Yeah, I became vegetarian 4 or 5 years ago, and
Mhm.
occasionally you get that feeling that you want to eat meat. I do still every now and
Yeah.
then.
Hmm.
But right immediately after that, I see this vision that really detracts me from doing it.
Yeah. My
It's
my other
almost
daughter is in that stage. Yeah.
yeah,
But
it's
after a certain, I
almost
think
instantaneous.
Yeah,
It's
I think she
almost
had some,
instantaneous.
and she had some chicken, and then after she was like, I feel really bad. I feel sick, mummy. I shouldn't have eaten it. I said, well, it's your decision. You know, if you don't want to
Yes,
eat it, don't eat it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So fascinating. Well, I'm exhausted at my questions. Do you have anything you want to add before we close here? Is there anything you want to share, or any
I'd,
thoughts, any feelings?
you know what? I think I'm so happy I spoke to you. It's so wonderfully, so wonderful.
Absolutely.
I
I really
feel a
enjoyed this
connection.
too.
I think that
Absolutely.
some people might think, oh, as I'm always aware of that people think it's hoo-ha what we're doing. It's if I could share what I've seen, what I've felt, connections with people, God, it's not hoo-ha. We're all,
It's yeah.
when it's amazing. So thank you so much.
Oh,
It
pleasure. Such a
was really good to
pleasure.
share.
Absolutely. And you know what? We can do this again because I feel that there's so much you have to offer, that there's so much you could teach
Thank you.
humanity with what you're sharing. I mean, there's so many probably experiences you've had that we haven't even touched on that open up, doors and doors of other realities for us. And thank you for this opportunity as well.
Oh, thank you. It was lovely. I think, you know, to anyone listening, just go for it. Don't just let go
Absolutely.
and trust. You all have it. There was a time where I thought it was all closed up, and it was all closed. I'd closed it all off. I couldn't see,
Yeah.
like, how will I ever see, this is not for me. Why do I keep doing this? But
Right.
the more you do it and you trust and you start this path, and then they'll start bringing things.
That's right. We all have it. And everyone has a unique experience.
Yeah,
It's the stories Marie shares or I share or others share. There are each individual stories,
yeah.
and we'll have these stories, but you'll have your own stories, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
your own experiences and your own. Maybe you won't be using crystals to heal. Maybe you'll use something else. And
Yeah,
could
yeah.
be like I noticed your pendant that you've got there. Is that essential oil in there, or
There's nothing in there right now, but yes, it is, and I just love it. The woman who made
it's
it,
beautiful?
it's so powerful, and I wear it a lot because it's
Yeah,
also about the fierce woman in you, and I
right.
feel that, and I know I need that because that's something I had to really work on. I am fierce because often women, you know, if you do your thing and it's like, oh, you're too much, or this, when we make ourselves smaller to fit in. We don't have to make ourselves smaller to fit in because we are needed exactly the way we are. um,
Absolutely.
that's really, really important. That's what I keep trying to teach also my boys about themselves and about women and my girls. And I think it's very important as women that we're wise, we know things, we
Yeah,
have to be here, we contribute, believe in yourself.
and that doesn't mean you can't be a woman too. Both can happen at the same time. You can be as
Absolutely.
elegant and beautiful as ever,
Totally. Yeah.
and be as fierce and powerful as ever as well,
Yeah,
both at the same time.
absolutely. It's a lot as a woman, actually, we go against, isn't it? Because, like, if you're like getting yourself pretty, which I love, doing my hair and put nice clothes on, and it doesn't mean you can't be fierce. It's not, it's too many women growing up still from my generation, be quiet and beautiful. Well, I'm telling you, that's gone. Come on, let's be who we
Right,
are. Well, let's be
right.
who we are. If you want to be beautiful, and but you're also, that doesn't mean you're not powerful. Or if
Absolutely.
it's whoever you
And vice
are.
versa.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marie. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
I want to do this again, and we
Yeah.
should definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I can send that
Okay.
through as well. That's well, I hope it will help people. It was so wonderful to talk to you.
As
Um
well, you and I love you, and we'll stay in touch.
I'll wishing you all the best, Shahira. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Marie.
Thank
Love and
you.
light. Bye
Bye.
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 Bye.